Hi everyone, it's Kimberly, Starfish Design Embroidery. Tonight we are making the PeekABoo bag. We're making the 11x7 PeekABoo bag. What is the PeekABoo bag, you ask? This is the PeekABoo. Look how cute this one is. Don't ask me where this fabric is from because I got it on a destash group. It's cotton lycra, so I've reinforced it with SF101 and Decovil Lite to give it some firmness. Why is this a PeekABoo bag? Because, PeekABoo, there's a zipper pocket. So we have a zipper pocket down here that has got a lapped zipper, so it's covered. You got a nice pocket there. And then you have your main bag pocket. And for some reason, I'm having trouble with this zipper. I think I mixed zipper company pull with the zipper, and usually it's not a problem, but for some reason this one's not doing a good job. So you have your nice interior, nice and big. The two D-ring strap connectors on the top, and it will fit a nice large mobile phone in the front. And this is a pretty nice size clutch right here, but I used Sorbet, Rainbow Sorbet from MyPunkBroidery is the bottom, and I did not interface that, so it's not quite as heavy as other bags are. And let's see, anything else? The zipper pull is from Wallet Hardware, which is now Luxe Hardware. She has a website now, but it's Wallet Hardware on Facebook. This zipper is from Ginger as well. The zipper pull is not, but this one is. This zipper tape, honestly, I'm sorry, I don't remember if it's from Gina or from Wizardy. They both have this one, and I've bought it from both of them, so I cannot tell you. I know this one is from Ginger, because I took it out of the bag just before the video started, that she put it in, but I'd already taken this one out, so it's either from Wizardy or from Ginger's Wallet Hardware. The D-ring strap connectors are rainbow. They're from MyPunkBroidery. So I hope you guys like the bag. It should be released in a couple of days. Today is Tuesday the 20th. So I should have it released in a few days. I have all the sizes tested. I just have to get the new video on, and also check out the video for the hack. I already have a hack for it. So if you want this panel to be clear vinyl, there's another video that will show you how to do that. Those instructions are not in the PDF for this. I didn't do it, so I made you a video instead to show you. There's just a couple of steps that you would do differently to add and make this a front clear pocket, and you'll see that bag on the other video. So hope you guys like it. Stay tuned for the video. Oh, I did try a new format. So I tried a format where I'm not going to show you all the stitching. I pause in between the steps, and so you don't have to waste all your time watching the machine stitch. So if you like watching the machine stitch, check out the other videos, but this one, I'm going to not show you all that. Thanks, guys. Enjoy the video. Hey, everybody. This is Kimberly, Starfish Design Embroidery. Again, today we are making the 11x7 PeekABoo bag. Trying a different camera angle here. I hope I don't knock it over. I've already done the hacked version that allows you to make a see-through pocket on the front. But this is going to be the standard version. So I've gone ahead and stitched out my placement lines already. And let's go over the materials that we need for this project. So we're going to need our D-ring strap connectors. I'm using vinyl this time. And I apologize, I should have used a more bland vinyl. So since I'm using this vinyl that has like the felt backing, I put in a piece of Decovil Lite in the middle just to reinforce it. Put those there. We need a lining panel for our bottom pocket, and this is going to be piece A, I believe it is. Let me look at the cutting guide. I actually got it prepared today. So this is piece A.
Finally, she got it prepared, guys.
And then we have our bottom front panel, which is piece B, and all the cutting instructions are on the PDF. Then we have our main bag lining, which we need 2 pieces of those. This is piece C. And then we have our exterior front top panel. And this is our piece D, and this does need to be cut exact. And then our backing piece E. And then we need 2 zippers. I recommend using a 3-inch zipper for the bottom pocket because the whole idea of the PeekABoo bag is that the bottom pocket zipper is semi-concealed. So let's move this stuff out of our way. We don't need these pieces yet. And we're going to need our zippers and our top panel, our bottom panel, and our lining pocket. So we only have one piece of lining for the bottom because it's going to get stitched just like this inside the bag. And you might have a tiny little bit of wiggle room, probably not. I actually cut this a ½ inch longer just because I wanted to see if I could get a little bit more room. But I'm trying to avoid, you don't want to get this caught in the bottom seam because it'll make that seam so much thicker having 2 more layers of fabric in it. So this cutting instructions were intended that this will not get caught in that bottom final seam. So let's move this stuff out of the way for a minute. Important thing to notice about this top panel here, I'm using this cotton lycra, so it's really stretchy, so I can interface the entire piece with SF101. If you're using cotton, standard cotton, you may not need to use it on the entire piece. Usually I leave it out of the seams, but we only want the Decovil to be, we want it away from the top seam, and then it's going to be away from this, but this needs to be cut exact. For the larger bags, it's 1.5 inches. For the smaller bags, it's 1 inch. It can be a little bit shorter, but don't make it longer because you'll see when we get to that step why that's important. I actually, since I'm using a number 3 zipper up here, I left just under 3/8 of an inch gap instead of a 1/4 inch, which I normally would use. I think you guys can see what I'm doing. Yeah, normally I would leave a 1/4 inch gap, but since I'm using a 3/8 inch zipper, I'm going to line it up with the zipper. I went ahead and left a little bit larger of a gap. You see how the difference is with the number 5 zipper and the 3. I said 3, I meant number 5. You see how much wider the number 5 zipper is to the number 3 zipper. This one's actually even wider than normally. Usually it's 1.25 inches and 1 inch, but this looks a little bit wider than 1.25 inches to me. So, and you'll see that the tape, the teeth are more narrow. So these teeth are supposed to be 3 millimeters, and these are 5 millimeters, and that's what the name comes from, 3 and 5. So now if you are used to just using your standard dressmaker zippers from Joann's, that's fine, perfect. You just want to cut, you want to get, it's in the cutting guide, you want them to be at least 1 inch longer on either end because you'll have those metal pieces and we don't want to get those caught in our seams. So this is zipper by the yard, so I just tape it, cut it so it's just about 1 inch longer this way and 1/4 inch longer that way. We are going to top stitch both of them, or sorry, tack them down at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and secure them. So we have our main bag outline, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 zipper placement lines for our zippers. This is the top zipper and this is the bottom zipper. We are going to line our zipper teeth, the back of our zipper teeth, with this line here, because you'll see this is only 1 inch wide, which is standard number 3 zipper. But as we said, this zipper is a little bit wider than that. So in order for all my bags to work with both 3 and 5, you don't have to buy a separate pattern for 5-inch zipper versus 3-inch zipper. You use the same one, and that's why I give you the center line. So as long as you center the zipper teeth on this center line, you'll get an even distribution of your zipper tape on either side, regardless of what size zipper you're using. When you go to do the flap down, you'll just have a little bit less of the zipper showing at the end than on the number 5 than you would on the number 3. But this makes it so much easier for you so you don't have to worry about it. On these zippers, it's really easy to see that center because they have white tape or white stitches there. So we just need to center this center line with our center placement. So how I do that, I always start at the opposite end and I tape it down. And you'll see I put a piece of tape at the end so my zipper doesn't come off, my zipper pull. So I go ahead and start at the end, and I just go ahead and center this. And like I said, I leave about 1/4 inch over the end and center that over and tape it down. So I'm going to do both of those. So I'm just centering it over that line. And if you are left-handed, then you'd want your zipper pull at the opposite end. I'm right-handed, So I make right-handed bags, so I always put the zipper pull at what will be the left-hand side when it's closed. So again, I'm going to just center the center of the teeth, which is the space in between there, right over this center line, and then I'm going to tape it down, so 1/4 inch. And then what I do, this is harder to show on camera, but I do what's called, I roll the zipper down, and I tape it down in small increments as I come down this stabilizer, centering it as I go. So I just kind of hold it and roll it down, and then I put small pieces of stabilizer. Oh, and I do have polymesh, no-show polymesh stabilizer hooped, because it's going to be stuck inside the bag. So you want something that's a little bit soft and pliable, not something that's crunchy. And the most of the tearaways are, they'll stay firm and kind of crunchy sounding in your bag. There is some tearaways that are a lot softer, like the number 360. I used to use that a lot from Pellon, but I found that it left a little bit too many fibers in the seams when I was tearing it away. All right, and so again, I'm just centering it here. Also, if you accidentally hit that with the iron, it melts really, and it's got a horrible smell. And then when I get down to the end, I just tape the zipper pull down out of the way so it doesn't come around loose on me. Now again, in the bag it mentions this particular zipper here, you can use a number 5, it'll work, but I recommend a number 3, because if you use a number 5, because the teeth are so much wider, it will show slightly in your bag, in your final bag. And the whole idea of this was to have, it's called a lapped zipper, and my whole idea behind it was to hide that zipper, so it'll look like you have a 2-panel bag when it's actually got 2 zippers in it. So it's cute, just a little bit something different. All right, so then I just go ahead and secure the top down. So I'm going to repeat it for the other zipper, and then we're going to run the zipper tack down line. Now I am going to try a different on this video. If you've already watched the video for the hacked version of this, you'll see I am trying something different. I normally am a real jibber-jabbery person. I try to instill information while my videos are going, but sometimes people don't like that, I guess. So I'm trying something different. You guys will have to let me know if you like it, and I will be pausing the video in between doing the stitching, so you won't actually watch the stitching because it's kind of boring. Nothing exciting, it's just the machine stitching. And if you want to see machine stitching, I have plenty of other videos out there that you can watch if you want to see the machine at its best. I am using a Janome 500E, and I have a 9014 needle because I'm going to be going through a lot of layers, and I'm not doing any satin stitching. So if I did satin stitching, I would start out with a 7511 and then switch over to the 9014 when I start to do the main construction with the D-ring strap connectors. But in this case, I'm not doing that, so I'm actually going to start with the bigger needle to begin with. All right, there we go. So hopefully you can see all that. And I'm going to try real hard. I noticed in the other video I was getting out of frame, but it's kind of hard with this big hoop and the limited space I have. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and stitch this down, and I'll be right back. Okay, and we're back. So you see I've gone ahead and stitched this down on both sides. The purpose of this is just to help keep our zipper so it doesn't move around when we're doing the next pieces. So now we're ready to take our bottom pocket lining, which is piece A, and our top border, which is, or I'm sorry, not our top border yet, our bottom panel, so piece A and piece B. And we're going to flip to the back side of our hoop. And when I'm talking about zipper placement, it's always in regard to the position of the zipper in the bag, in the final bag. So this is the top, this is the bottom, not left, right, east, or left, right, north, bottom, top, whatever, sorry. Because I don't know how you're going to have the bag, how the zipper is going to be oriented in your machine. In this one, because of where my hoop position is, I have to have my zippers on the left hand side because my hoop position is on the right hand side. But your hoop my hoop attachment, I mean. Your hoop attachment may be on there, so if that's the case, you need to rotate the design and put your zippers over here. Now, as far as I'm aware, it's only the Janome that does not allow you to rotate a design like this in your machine. You have to do it through software. So I put all my designs defaulted to the Janome format, just so that the Janome customers don't have to worry about it. Don't ask me why. To me, that's not a selling factor for Janome, because I've never known any other, even my very old Bernina knew how to rotate a design that. So what happens if we try to rotate it, it gets into this horizontal position, which is beyond the stitch area of the Janome. And the Janome is not smart enough to know, yeah, dummy, I can rotate this one more time and get it in the right format. So I digress, but it's only one. So what we're going to do is flip over to the back, and we're going to be working on the bottom zipper first. And we're going to line up the long edge of our lining panel with the right side down along that bottom of the bottom zipper. So just center this over, eyeball it. It's a straight bag this time, so you don't need to worry about having enough space on either side for flared out bottoms. And I do like to put another piece in the center of the tape, because sometimes this can kind of go a little loose. And then, so the pretty side is facing down, and then you're going to flip this over and make sure that this is out of the way, and you can stitch it, pin it to this if you need to. But we're going to just leave it like that for one moment, because we're going to flip it down. Then we're going to take this panel and we're going to center it over. And mine is really close because I actually did cut my bag, this piece incorrectly. So I have to be real careful. And then we're going to go ahead and tape that down on either side and then in the middle. So if you are working with a directional fabric, you would put it down like this, lay it with the wrong side facing the bottom of the hoop, so it's in the right position, and then just flip it up and it'll be in the right position. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and stitch this, and I'll be right back. Okay, that's all stitched down now. We're going to flip to the back, remove the tape, and you can see I have tape all over my machine. I go through every once in a while, like maybe once a month, and clean it all off. And then we're going to go ahead and lightly fold this down and gingerly finger press this seam right here, so that we have a nice closure. Now you're going to see that my material is now in my hoop attachment area, and we don't want that because I need it to be able to hoop it. So all I'm going to do is roll this up, and then I'm going to tape this down at either end just to hold it out of the way, because we're not stitching down here right now. So this, we just don't want this to come loose and get hooked into our seam attach or our hoop attachment. All right, and then we're going to go ahead, and I removed the tape here already, and we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to gingerly finger press this and then tape it down. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and return this to the hoop, and we're going to run stitch number 4, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so now we've gone ahead and top stitched our bag here, and we're going to go ahead and flip it over, and we're going to add the main bag lining. We're going to leave this as it is for right now, and then we're going to add our main bag lining, one of the panels. And just like we did before, we're going to line it up with the bottom of the top zipper placement line. Right side, pretty side facing down. Now it's important to note, and if you want to add, oh, I really cut this poorly. If you want to add any additional embroidery to the bag, I would recommend you do it now. So what you'd want to do is go ahead, and this is the only place that you can add it really, is the bottom of the panel. So what you'd want to do is go ahead and fold the pocket lining up, and then do your embroidery, and then fold it back down. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and get our little border panel here. Move that out of the way. And we have two pieces here that we have to pay attention to. We have our hemmed piece and our Decovil section. We want this side to be aligned with our zipper. The hem is going to be away from it. So again, we're going to center it over the zipper placement line. I'm sorry, we're going to center it over the zipper, the bottom of the zipper, and tape it down. And I'm using Transport medical tape for my taping down. If you wondered, I forgot to mention that. And also I am using polyester embroidery thread. It's important that you use polyester for in the hoop bags because rayon is too stretchy and it will not be good for the construction of a bag. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch this down and then I'll be right back. Okay, now we're done with that tack down. We're going to go ahead and remove our tape. All right. And we can use this, we use this tape usually at least 3 to 4 times. And we're going to flip over to the back. Oops, this came loose. Let me put another piece of tape down here because I do not want this to get stuck somewhere. All right, and then we're going to fold this down. Oh, I hope I have enough because I cut that really jakey, so I had to kind of offset it. We're going to fold it down, finger crease the seam, just like we did this bottom panel, and tape it back down. And mine was really crooked now, but that's okay, it's the lining. And it's not going to get in the way of my hoop attachment, so I don't need to worry about that down there. I usually like to get the tape right here on these corners because they tend to be what will come loose. I'm just going to hold it with my hand and flip it over and make sure, you look under here, make sure it didn't come loose. And then we're going to fold this panel down. And you see that since I lined it up with that, where that Decovil is, it's going to fold over nicely and crease. And I don't really even need to worry about finger creasing it. And I'm just going to tape it in a few places to hold it down. Because this is kind of going all the way to the extension of the hoop, so most of the time I don't have any issues with this tape, but on some vinyls, if it's on here too long, it will leave a little bit of residue. So be mindful of that, and if you need to, test it in a scrap area. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and run the top stitch, and I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. So I've gone ahead and did the top stitching, so now we're going to flip this over to the back, and we're going to roll this lining panel out of the way. At this point, you can actually pin it to the other side of the stabilizer. It's going to be out of the way for a couple of steps here. Since I'm cutting out the stitching steps here, I do want to highlight the point that, especially when you get to the D-ring strap connectors, you need to make sure you have enough room to get around the hardware. But my machine to pull the tails goes back and forth, so I can actually lift it up higher in the back when I'm at the D-ring strap connectors. I do that when I hear the thread cutter stop after it's stitched. I lift it in the back so it doesn't get stuck on the D-ring strap connectors. So if you have this machine or the Elna version of it, make sure you do that. Because if you hit the hardware, you're going to be mess up your whole bag. So we need to go ahead and put our panel, our lining panel, up here and line it up. But before we do that, we need to cut the stabilizer out behind the zipper. If we don't, we will not be able to open our zipper. So what I do is I go ahead, and normally you'd have something stitched up here, but we don't yet, so we have to kind of guesstimate. So I go ahead and just cut along the bottom here with my seam ripper, and then I'll use my scissors to trim the rest. So what I do is I get the seam ripper underneath so that I can see the blade of the seam ripper right under that poly mesh, and then I just kind of guide it down. And it's easier to do this when you're looking at it closer up, and just guide it down gently and slowly. For me, I do ball up on this particular one, but you can do ball down if you want. And then I'm going to go ahead and use my duckbill scissors and cut across at the edge here. Normally you'll see when I get to do the zipper for the top one, you'll see how I normally would do it. But since the zipper isn't tacked down on the other end, and then we're going to go ahead and trim just to where that tack down line was and all the way across. Okay, and then go ahead and cut it off down here. Now that's all ready for you. So now what we're going to do, oh, my thread came undone. So we're going to go ahead and run our top of our pocket and line that up with the top of the zipper. And I wanted to try, actually I'm going to line mine up a little bit higher because it is going to get too close to the seam. I added a 1/2 inch on it just to make sure I had enough, but since it's my first time doing this bag, but I definitely don't need that 1/2 inch. So I'm going to go ahead and extend mine a little bit above, but you're going to be lining it up with the top of the zipper, and then we're going to tape it down. Tape both edges down on the corners, and then also tape down here, because if you don't, it'll come loose on you when you're stitching. And so it should not be coming up to your bottom pocket there. And this is actually not even. I can tell because it's not all the way across. There we go. So the final seam is going to be just a couple of threads inside your placement line. So you'll see how this will just come real close to the bottom, but not in the bottom. We don't want it in the seam allowance. Okay, we're going to flip this over. And now what we're going to do is we're going to flip this up out of the way, and we're going to run our placement line for the seam. And I'm going to go ahead and just run that on camera because it's just one quick little line. After I rethread my needle, sometimes if I'm not being careful when I'm pulling the hoop in and out, I pull that thread out. And my needle threader doesn't seem to be wanting to work tonight. It's hit or miss. And yeah, I know how to do the little lock and put it down, but it still doesn't work all the time. I do think it's when your needle gets old. I think it gets old inside the eye, and I'm just trying to let this needle go this one more bag, and then it'll need replaced. So go ahead and carefully pull everything back under here, and we're going to have to pull this out of our way. Oops, it's still taped down there. And with the Decovil on there, it's kind of hard to keep it down, but so it may not stay down for you. So you'll just want to use your stiletto or hold it here, because we're going to put a placement line right there on the zipper. And this placement line is going to hold down our lining in the back and also give us a place to line up this panel. So that was that quick. So that's why I didn't want to stop the video for you. Okay, so now this is the tricky part. We need to line up the fold of our hem, this fold, with this placement line. And you want it to you have to kind of curve this panel. I don't want to fold it because I don't want to crease in my Decovil. So if you're not using Decovil, you can kind of just fold it. And this is why I recommend you don't use vinyl for this, because it's very thick. And this is actually going to be probably a little too thick for me because the cotton lycra is actually a thicker fabric than cotton woven. And then I have that SF101 and the Decovil on there. So I'm kind of fighting against it here, but I'm going to do my best. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the center. And it's probably easier if I go like this and just kind of run my fingers along here to help it curve. And then we want to curve this down so it just covers that stitch line we just did, because the next line is going to stitch right on top of that. So if it's not perfect, don't worry about it, but we want to try and get it as close to being just covering that line as we can. And I use a lot of tape. And then what I'll do is I'll use my stiletto to help hold it and guide it out of the way while it's stitching. And this is a good time to go ahead and slow your machine down for this step, just because you're going to have your stiletto in there and trying to hold it in place. So again, I'm just covering that placement line. And I'm fighting against gravity here because this piece wants to come forward, but I want to try and get it to cover that as much as I can. Again, definitely not recommended for vinyl. I'll just go ahead and tape it down a whole bunch of places. This one's not good. And I'll use my stiletto as I go along to help hold it into place. I think I might go ahead and leave that piece on film so you guys can see how I do that. If it starts to go off kilter, then I'll stop the machine and reposition and then restart it and keep going. But we're going to have just a tiny little bit of reveal at the top, at the bottom of this hem to the zipper teeth, and that's expected. So use lots and lots of tape. And again, your mileage may vary. If you're using just regular piece of cotton here, you probably will not have to have the struggle of holding this down. But if you are doing it like I am with the Decovil and everything, it's going to want to go against you. It's worth it though. It is worth it. It is worth it. Okay, now you see I have every pieces covered up. So I'm going to go ahead and slow my machine down. And it can go to 400. I'm going to position this back on my hoop. Make sure my lining is out of the way. I'm going to put my seam ripper in stiletto mode. And then I'm going to start. So I want to keep my fingers away from that needle is the goal. So I'm going to just go ahead and hold it with the stiletto. And see how I'm doing that? I hope you can see. I think the ridge of the material might be in your way, preventing you from seeing it, but I'm just kind of coaxing it along with my stiletto, trying to make sure that material stays in place. We don't want it covering our zipper. Right down here, it's coming off kilter a little bit as we get to the end. So I'm going to go ahead and stop it. And then I'm holding it out forward with my stiletto. And then I'll finish it. And then it's just going to go ahead and come right back around and do another line behind it. And this time you don't need your stiletto anymore. You can kind of hold it if you need to, but it should be okay without holding it even. Let's see how it's doing that second line then. You never want to get your fingers anywhere near that needle, because that needle will go right through your finger, especially if you're at high speed. And I've seen horror stories in the different groups of people showing their pictures of their x-rays and having to have emergency surgery to get pieces of needle out of their fingers. Just not something I'm down for in the age of Corona. Well, I'm not down for it any time, but especially not in the age of Corona. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and remove all my little scraps of tape here. And you'll see this usually comes right out without any trouble. But use your stiletto if you need to get any little pieces out. I'm going to get the big pieces out first so I can reuse those. Ooh, that's got glitter on it. Huh. I never noticed that happened before with this tape. This is actually, the glittery stuff is coming off. But so you have to know, you have to be careful. Sometimes it does that with certain type. Like I cannot use this with any of the tulle from MyPunkBroidery. It pulls the paint right off. So, I mean, I'll use it, but I will only use it in the seams. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this here. All right, and now we're going to go ahead and turn over the hoop and fold down the lining, because we're going to go ahead and do our fold down of this panel, and then we're going to tack that down on both ends and then run our D-ring strap connectors, and we want our lining to be down when we do that, because there's 4 sets of D-ring strap connectors. There's a placement and a tack down. So you have a choice whether you want to have the D-ring strap connectors on the top of the bag or on the side. Usually you would do the side if you're doing a wristlet strap and you just want to use either the right side or the left side and carry it as a wristlet. All right, so, ooh, did I get that lined up right? I don't know what I did there. That's gonna be really close on this side. Don't do that. Well, I don't know what I did, but I laid this down crooked. And so now my little lining over here is gonna be really tight. Let me see. Don't do that what I did. Oh yeah, it should be okay, but it's gonna be really tight. Okay, so this is, our lining is down. So now we're gonna flip this over, and what we're gonna do now is we want to fold this panel down on top of itself, and it should just roll down. But before we do that, I almost forgot, we want to open up our zipper. So go ahead and roll this over. We don't need the tape on it. You're not going to turn through this pocket, so don't worry about it. So just lay it here and then like 3/4 over. And so you'll see if you need to put your finger in here to kind of pull this down, you can do it. But with the Decovil in there measured exactly, it wants to fold itself right over on top of itself. I'm going to go ahead and run a piece of tape over here to hold this end down. And I'm going to put a little piece in the center just for a brief moment, just to help reinforce the side panels. Maybe it doesn't want to stay down. Well, that tape has already got that glitter on it. Okay, try this one. And then we're going to pull it over here. Now, what I want you to look at is over here, it's going to stitch here. It's going to make a little travel stitch down here and come back around here. If you have a thick layer here, your presser foot might try and get stuck, excuse me, right here. So figure out where your top stitching ends, and you want to put a piece of tape right there just to help keep that down, and your presser foot will glide right over it. And I'm actually going to use 2 pieces. I use both the 1/2 inch and the 1 inch wide. And I want to go ahead and double check this because it looks like I may have got it off angled because it's covering down here, but it's not covering down here. So let me just make sure this is pulled down all the way. And it wasn't. So one of those things to check, but luckily I noticed it and I would have stitched it down. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this here screwdriver I happen to have sitting here. So just get something that's long and help roll it down so that it's rolled all the way down on top. There should not be any give in it. And now it's covering the top stitching like it should be. And then when you're all done with the bag, you can actually use a pressing cloth and press this down and crease it. All right, but I'm glad I noticed that. So now you see, if you look, it's mostly going to be covering the top stitching all the way down. Just a little bit off because that zipper pull is actually going to pull it up a little bit. All right, make sure my lining didn't come loose underneath. And we're going to go ahead and run the other stitch, and then I'll be right back with you. Okay, so we've gone ahead and run step 9, which did our little basting tack down here. It brings some carry stitches down here just to help navigate over to this side of the hoop. and then it ran the tack down on this side. Then we run our D-ring strap placements. So there's one here, here, and here. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this tape, and then I'm going to lay my D-ring strap connectors and my D-rings down. So this is the part where you got to know how wide your presser foot is. Ideally, you want to make sure you have enough room between the hardware and the presser foot to get through, but you don't want necessarily to have very long straps hanging that don't look very nice and attractive in your bag. So for me, on my machine, I find that if I place the hardware, the top straight part of the D-ring strap connector, so it's lined up with the top of my panel, I have enough room for my presser foot to get by, and it has an attractive look to me still. So I'm going to use the two top placements, and I got these 3/4 inch rainbow D-ring straps from MyPunkBroidery. She finally had these in, and they're really nice quality. Highly recommend them. Okay, so let me see if I can hold this up to you to see those a little bit better. Right there and there, and then there's one here and here. Now, I did have somebody email me and ask me if I would consider making these separate steps, so somebody could just skip like the left and right side altogether. And I did have them like that originally when I first started doing these designs, but I actually had people who got confused by it. So I stopped doing it that way, and I've just lost my other D-ring. If you know how to fast forward on your machine, then you can go ahead and just skip the stitching that you don't need. How did I just lose that strap connector? So much for me keeping it together. I had it in here. Okay, well, we're going to hold on just a minute. I'm going to have to get another one, and I'll be right back. Okay, sorry for that intermission. I'm back. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and fold the D-ring strap connector into the hardware and fold it in half. And then I'm going to line it up. So these strips are about 1 inch wide, but my D-ring strap connector is only 3/4 inches wide. So I'm going to line them up both up with this inside piece of the measurement. So I do it 1 inch so that you can go up to 1 inch wide on your hardware. If you use a larger piece than that, then you'd want to just go ahead and measure it with a ruler, make sure so it's even on both sides. Okay. And again, you need to make sure you have enough room here for your zipper, your presser foot to get through and not hit that hardware. It's going to stitch right here on this line. And you'll see you have the placement line. Your final stitch line is going to be just about on that placement line, maybe a little bit farther in. I didn't just cut this one real quick so it's not as neat as the other one, but that's okay. So, and then I eyeball it and make sure that they look like they're measured up correctly. And I'm going to go ahead and run the tack down of those, and I'll be right back. Now, let me hold this up so you can see what that looks like at this point. And I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. So now we've gone ahead and tacked down our D-ring strap connectors. And you'll notice we have not opened up the zipper yet. We're not doing that yet. Just stay patient. We'll get there. I do my bags a little bit differently than other digitizers do it. So we're ready to put our second lining panel on the back, and Kimberly's going to do a little bit better job lining this one up so it's not crooked. So again, we're going to put our pretty side down and center it over our zipper so that it's lined up with the top of our zipper. And then we're going to tape it down. We're not going to tape it all over the place because we'll be lifting this back up in a minute. So I'm just going to tape the corners down. And down here, hold it with this to hold it in place for just a minute. Okay. There we go. Now we're going to take this panel, and again, if your panel is directional, then put it like this so it's in the right direction, and then just flip it this way. And then we want to take and center this over the top of this zipper placement line. Or I'm sorry, I keep saying zipper placement line. The zipper. All right, so we're going to line it up, and I'm going to overlap it just a tiny bit because I find with this vinyl that has the felt-like backing, it shifts a little bit and likes to kind of push down like this when the presser foot comes by, and then the seam allowance gets really tight. So for this kind of vinyl, I'm going to scooch it over a little bit too because I cut this a little too wide. For this kind of vinyl, I do offset it about 1/8 of an inch at the top of the zipper, just to give me that little bit of allowance of the drag from the presser foot, not pushing it out of the way. Even when I tape it a lot, I still seem to have that problem happen sometimes. All right, so there we go. We got that all taped in place, and we're going to go ahead and run step 12, and I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. So we've ran step 12. Now we're going to turn over to the back of the hoop, move this tape out of the way, and we're going to fold our lining up and finger crease the seam and tape it back down so that the extra lining material is hanging off the hoop at this point. So go ahead and finger crease the seam gently. When you're all done, you can, of course, iron that with a pressing cloth. But hold this like this as you flip it over to hold it out of the way. Now at this point, you have two options. You can go ahead and fold this up if you want, and then top stitch through so that your back panel has top stitching on it as well. I'm not going to do that because I find when I put the D-ring strap connectors on the top here, like if you were on a regular sewing machine, you would stitch through the D-ring strap connectors when you did that top stitching. But our machine would not be able to get through those like that and as close to that. So I find it makes them jut up a lot. A little bit. I don't like the look. So it's just the back of it. I don't really mind if it's top stitched. If I do the strap connectors on the side, then I top stitch it. So since I'm not going to top stitch it, I'm going to fold it back down. But if you're going to top stitch it, you're going to go ahead and finger crease it. And look at this. You can see my reveal is not very good. I did not get this zipper centered very well. But you're going to finger crease it and then tape it down and then do the next step. But for me, I'm going to go ahead and just leave it down like it already was and run the next step. So we're up to 13 and I'll be right back. Okay, we've completed step 13, so we're going to be ready to do number 14. But before we do that, 14 is going to do our stitching all around this bag. Before we do that, we need to open up our zipper. So I like to go ahead and pull the zipper pull, and this time I like to take it about 3/4 across the bag, and basically I just take it to the next D-ring strap connector. So just fold it over to that. And I'm going to remove this tape off of here. We don't need that anymore. And then because I have all this hardware here, it kind of makes this panel not want to lay down flat. So just pull it as tautly as you can. Another thing about this material is it's a little bit stretchy. This vinyl is a little stretchy. So when I stitch it down, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the top left, and it's going to stitch down. So I'm going to start here. It's going to stitch to the middle. But it's not going to keep going all the way over here because you see there's stretch in this. If I do that, see what happens? It wants to bunch up. Even if you tape it down really good, it slides against each other and it wants to bunch up. So what we're going to do is we're going to stitch it here to here. I'm going to do a couple little basting stitches here. And then we're going to come up here and start this way and guide it back down to here. That way if there's any give or any bunching, it's going to happen at the bottom of our bag where it can be more graciously coaxed into the final seam. So what I do is I keep my seam ripper handy, or my seam ripper, my stiletto, and I kind of coax it as it goes along. And if I see that it's starting to look like it's going to get puckered, then I go ahead and stop the machine and I tape it back down and make sure it's really tight. So the better you tape this, the less likelihood it does that puckering, but trust me, it just wants to do that because of the type of vinyl it is. It slides against each other, and with this knit backing, it has stretch in it. So this is actually a really good one to use if you're making things like sanitizer cases, because it has a little bit of give to it. So I'm going to get my stiletto ready, or your bamboo stick, whatever you use. And I'm going to have that ready to help guide it when it's stitching. I'm going to help guide it away from this needle so that I make sure it does not pucker on me. So I'm going to run step 14 and I'll be right back. Okay, I haven't finished this step yet. I just wanted to show you where we're at, halfway through. So, and I'm going to watch it. And see how we can already see that we're starting to get a little bit of gumption there. So this is why I make this stitch is just a basting stitch, and it's out of the seam path, so you can pull it out if you're looking like you're going to get some puckers there. Of course, I say that, and it's not wanting to come out, but just one of those stitches stuck in there. So what we're going to do is coax this with the seam stiletto. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this on while you see this step, just so you can see how I do that. So we're going to go ahead and start it back up. Make sure our lining is out of the way. And then we use our seam ripper, our stiletto, just to help coax the material. Oh, don't cut it though. I just cut it. Hope I didn't. And just kind of guide it. I don't know if this is cutting it. It feels like it's cutting it. And just help coax it. And then it'll get in there. It looks like we might get a tiny little pleat, but it should be fine. It's going to run a couple of, let me finish, let it do it. Just so you'll see, it'll make sense to you. It's going to run a couple of travel stitches to get us started back up here again. Oh, I hope that stiletto did not cut through that vinyl. I'll be very sad. Oh, good, it did. So see, we have a little bit of give right here, but when we turn the bag, it'll be fine. But if we had this little extra up here, then our zipper would not look good. Okay, so now I'm going to run the next step, 15, which is the last step. So before we do that, we have two things we have to do. We have to open up the zipper on the back and fold our lining down. So just like we did before, we're going to use our seam ripper, and we're going to gently open up that zipper and remove the stabilizer. So we're going to go ahead and get our seam ripper positioned so you can see it. That's why I love the no-show poly mesh, because I can see my seam ripper right underneath. And I hope you guys can see that. And I'm going to go ahead and slide it along here carefully. Do not want to cut my lining or my zipper. And then I'm going to come down here at the end and let it poke out through the bottom. Now I'm going to flip it around, and this time I have to hold on to the stabilizer from this side to give some tension to make sure that it stays close. And I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm just going to cut along here. If you don't like doing it this way, do it whatever method works for you. Some people like to use those little scissors, but I find the seam ripper is what works best for me. It's hard to do this on the camera. One of these days I need to get my son in here so he can do the in live movement and everything, and zoom in and all that fun stuff. One of these days I'll get him convinced to help his mama out. Oh, I had a thread stuck in there. It's like, why is that not moving? And see, as I go along, I reposition my hand and hold on to this tiny little thread from the other side, just so I can get a nice clean cut. Now, I've too many times cut my lining when I tried to use the seam ripper down here, so I do switch over to these duckbill scissors at this point. Ooh, I almost got my needle stuck. Be very careful when you're doing that with these big hoops. All right. Now we're ready to go ahead and place our lining down. So the right sides are now together. The pretty sides will be kissing each other. And we'll tape it down so it doesn't come loose on our final step. And just like we did before, we're going to go ahead and run the stitching from the top down to the bottom. We're going to leave an opening for our turning, and then we're going to take a few steps to carry the stitching over to the top right, and then come down from the top right, just like we did with the exterior. So that's all together. Make sure it didn't come loose when you put it back under here. And I'm going to go ahead and, so we're going to stitch it here to here. We're going to stop. We're going to carry a few stitches right here and then come back up here and start here and come down to there. So that is our last step, which is 15. So I'm going to do that and I'll be right back. Okay, we are done. So we are skipping step 16 because that is just to make sure the machine doesn't come back into the center and get stuck on any of that glorious hardware you have in here. Well, before we unhoop it, we always want to turn over to the back and make sure that we have a clean stitch out, nothing came loose, and that we have our opening right there for our turning. So we're going to go ahead and remove all the tape. It's just a little easier to do if you do it while it's hooped. If you don't get it all, it's not the end of the world. You can get it when you're cutting it apart. All right, and then let's do it on the front. Tape down here from earlier that I didn't remove. I try to remove the tape as you're going along. Just, it makes it easier in the end with this pieces once it's secured down, then remove the tape. But I do use a lot of tape. I don't apologize for it. It's just safer that way. Keep my fingers away from that needle. So if you notice that what I've started to do with my bags is the very final stitch with the lining. I bring in just a smidge from the outside into the seam allowance. That helps to distract, that's not the word. That helps to keep the lining, the stitches from showing in the lining. It's just a sewing trick that I learned when you're working with vinyl. And so it doesn't always work, but sometimes depending on the vinyl, it will help. So it's getting late here, so I'm not gonna go real easy on the, I usually try to trim this out a little bit more cleanly, but you'll see me do that in other videos. But since it's getting late, I'm going to go ahead and just trim this out even. So I'm going to do about a 1/4 inch seam allowance everywhere except the D-ring strap connectors. I usually do leave the zipper a little bit longer too, but in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and just trim that off. But for sure, you need to leave the D-ring strap connectors longer because they take a lot of abuse from carrying the weight of your bag, and they can come loose. And when you leave like a 1/2 inch longer, it creates a cantilever effect to help offset some of the pressure of the weight of the bag on that joint. And then you don't have as much likelihood of that coming through, that seam coming apart. And that's happened. I've seen so many people who even in the sewing world, it's like, oh, this broke, and you know, they've sold it to somebody. And especially if you're using webbing, with webbing, you need to make sure if you're using cotton webbing, you want to make a seam and put some glue, what is it called? Not glue be gone. The fray check on the cotton webbing and leave it longer. And if you're using poly or nylon webbing, you want to burn the edges, because if you don't, it'll just start shredding. But see, if we leave this extra little tab here, we're going to go ahead and we don't want to cut into our zipper either. But if we leave that tab there, we can remove this extra vinyl, and then that little tab will give us an extra little bit of motion as the bag is working. So even if it does start to come loose, you'll have it and you can repair it. I'm going to trim the corners off a little bit at the top. I try not to trim too much because it ends up getting into the zipper, and I don't like to do that. So down here we want to leave a tab, another sewing trick. So I like to go ahead and cut, and then we want to leave about an extra 1/2 inch total seam allowance in the turning hole. So what I do is I just kind of eyeball it, and I do a 45-degree angle cut, and then I trim it into here. But we do not need the whole bag to be that. So I fold this down and then trim the rest of it to our 1/4 inch. With some vinyls, you can do a half or as low as 1/8 of an inch for the vinyl. But with the knit backings, I like to keep that 1/4 inch in there. Now, the trick for getting a nice corner is, a lot of times you'll see people will just go like this. And then you flip it inside out. And what happens when you do that is, when you flip it inside out, all this material has to get into that corner, and it creates a very bulky corner. So if instead you go in here and you taper the sides into that corner, you'll remove all that bulk. So when it comes together in the bag, that bulk is diminished. So what I do is I just kind of like come over here at an angle, and then over here at an angle. And you just taper it. Okay, and now we're going to go ahead and turn it right side out. And there's a nice turning hole, so you don't normally, I might use my, where are they at? Hemostats to turn the bag. But in this case, I can get my hand in there, so I don't really need to. So I get one corner and I pull it in. Hope we're still on, my battery's getting low. And then turn it to the outside. And often you'll hear me say that I don't close my bag until I've already turned it all the way to the right side out. And then I turn it inside out and close it. I'm going to close it to show you guys how to do that. But the reason I don't do it normally is because if there's any mistakes that I didn't catch up to now, but when I turn it right side out, I can see that maybe some seam got off kilter and I can fix it with my sewing machine, then I want to be able to do that. But once you secure the hole closed, the turning hole closed, then you won't be able to do it unless you use thread. Use thread, you can always pull the thread out. Okay, so go ahead and work those corners out just to get the bottom. It's easier if you work them out as much as you can now. So when you turn it to the final right side, it's better. And then I'm using Fabri-Tac by Beacon. And it's got a very, oh, I forgot, I'm using these Kai 7205 scissors. They are the best. So what I do is I take the glue and I use some of these quilting clips. I'm calling them quilting clips. These are the generic kind that I got off of Amazon, the big box store on the internet. Let me move this stuff out of the way for a moment. I don't know where my bag went. So I just get a bunch of those, and then I turn this so it's facing me, so that the seam side is facing me, so I can fold it over like this. And then this piece here, you'll see it automatically wants to turn into itself and be automatically creased. So just fold it. I'm going to fold it in a little bit. It's not creased really well. Just fold it in, and then if you need to give it a little extra finger crease, go ahead and do that. But it automatically wants to crease itself. So I'm going to finger crease it, and then I'm going to start. I usually start at the end and work my way down, but this is a very long opening, so I'm going to start in the middle and work outwards. So I just put a little bit of glue there. This glue got me up on the top. And then I put the, put my little wonder clip there to hold it down. So go ahead and pull this up. And I get it so it just meets the stitching. And then put my wonder clip there. And now I'm going to reach in here and do this end. I don't know why this glue is like, let me get this cleaned off here. I don't know what it's doing here. I had the lid on it, yet it still got bubbled up. Okay, so again, I'm going to go ahead and just put a little bead of glue all along the stitching, just underneath where the stitch line is. And then go ahead and press the folded edge into that glue. I try not to get it on my fingers because I don't like it. It's not the easiest to rub off, but you can use rubbing alcohol. And use my little clips. Ooh, that almost got on my machine. So make sure you put the lid back on this glue, because you see how it's coming out all by itself. You don't even have to press it. I accidentally ruined my table. I didn't realize the lid was off, and I must have just been spazzing or something one day, left the lid off and it came out and fell down onto my table and ruined the finish on my table. So if it gets like this, you might have to pull it up like that. And then it gets on your finger, or you can press your hemostats into there. And then I'm going to go ahead and pin it with the clips. And it only takes about 20 seconds to set up. So it takes, I think, 24 hours to cure. But if you just leave it like that for about 20 seconds, it will go ahead and set up. So while it's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and reach in here and finish opening my zipper. I have that D-ring in there, so I need to work it past that D-ring and open the rest of my zipper. And then by the time you do that, it's usually ready to go. It's usually set up and you can remove your clips. I'm going to give it one more minute. And see how it's already set up. See that? All right, then we're going to turn the bag. Lining side is out now. We're going to flip it so that the right side is out. And then just work your fingers into there and get those corners out as best you can with your hands. I forgot to tell you what vinyl this is. This is a Sorbet from MyPunkBroidery, Rainbow Sorbet. It's really nice for in the hoop bags because it's not too thick. And like I said, you only have, like, let's see, you can even push it out really well. You only have that one little issue to worry about with the stretch in it. So you got to be careful when you're doing those last stitchings. So now I got it mostly out, and you can roll these little seams in between your fingers and press it like that. So now I'm going to take my rounded over machine device. I'm using the hemostats, and I just reach in here and I use my hand here to guide it and hopefully not poke through my vinyl. And then I work that corner out as much as I can. You're not going to get a perfectly straight corner because you have material in there that's filling up that corner. But we want it as nice out as we can get it. If you're using cotton, you can actually bring your seam ripper in here. And I've seen them do that, the sewing people. Not the seam ripper, I'm sorry, the stiletto. I won't do that with vinyl because I'd be afraid I'd tear it. But I watch these Asian seamstress, and they're really good. And they just take this in here and they kind of like go like this and they pull it out. I don't want to do that with my vinyl because I don't want to tear it. So I'm okay with that. So I'm going to come over here and work this corner out. And just to your benefit, you know, you want it more pokey, poke it out more. If you don't mind it's a little rounded, then leave it a little more rounded. This corner I did much better. And then I rub the rounded edge along my seams inside, and it just helps open that seam up and helps to make it a neater seam. So now I got to try and get this one out a little better because that other side is better than this side is. There we go. And then just run along there, run along the seam inside. Now on the corner here, what I do is I put my thumb here, I put the rounded edge in underneath that zipper, and then I just roll the zipper out of that seam. And just go gingerly because you don't want to tear your vinyl. But just put your finger up here and then roll it with the hemostats, and that seam will come open for you. And that's nice and neat. And then over here, you get a lot of bulk right here in this seam. Some people will tell you to cut that out. I don't believe in that because I think that creates a vulnerability in your bag. So what I do is I use the hemostats again. I push that material down into the seam allowance inside the bag. So I'm pushing it down with that and rolling it up into here. And then the same thing, I roll my zipper out at the same time. So push it down and roll. And it takes a little bit of practice. I wasn't really good at this, doing this at first, but you want to be very careful because you don't want to tear that seam. And then when you close it, well, I don't know why it's not wanting to close now on me. There we go. You can get almost all the way to the very end when you do that. So I have a little bit there I need to work out more. so I can tell that. Oh, I don't know why the zipper is not working very well. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and work a little bit more into that seam to try and get that to be a little bit neater. I think the zipper is tight because I didn't line it up well the first time. And so it's got a little bit too much material right there. All right. There we go. And now flatten your bag, and you have your hidden zipper right there. And if you had one of those other zippers where it's got the tiny little triangular pole, it would lay and stay flat there and you wouldn't even see it at all when you have the bag like this. Oh my goodness, some of the glitter from this has worked into this and it looks really cool. Hopefully you guys can see that. There we go. So this is the 11 by 7 PeekABoo bag, and you have a nice big pocket here that will fit. This is the 7 Plus. It'll fit in there. And if you watch the hack video to show how to use clear vinyl here for the pocket, then you could actually use your phone through it. I don't, it's a real tight fit on the 8.5 by 6 inch, but it's a little bit looser in the bag in here. So, I don't know if you'd want to do it that way, but you could. But definitely it's an option for you, so it'll fit in there. All right, guys, that's it. Here's the inside of that lining bag, and remember that pocket is loose in there. We didn't get that stuck in the seam. And then here's our, oh, I don't know why I'm having trouble with this zipper. I feel like I've got it on backwards, but I don't. I might have to put some wax on it. And there's our inside there, all closed up. So, hope you guys like it. Give me a thumbs up if you do. I will have, today is Tuesday. Wait, yes, today's Tuesday, the 20th. So I should have this listed within a couple of days. I have to package it all up together. And I'll put a link to the Etsy listing down in the comment or in the description. So if you like my bags, please consider subscribing to my channel. If you hit the bell, and you'll get notifications when I release the new patterns, because I usually release the video before I release the pattern on Etsy. And have a good day, guys. Thanks.